Welcome everybody to the GreenCape webinar in partnership with WISA. Today we're going to be presenting on unlocking investment opportunities in the South African water sector. Just going to start off by introducing GreenCape. So GreenCape is a non-profit organization. We are working in the circular economy space, helping to bring suppliers and users of green solutions together. These 10 circles on your screen are representative of our key markets. And today we will, of course, be focusing on the water side of things. As our water team, which you'll see in our panel discussion today, this includes myself, Ashton, Claire, Roldo, Jane, and Marielle. And what we do as the water team in GreenCape is we speak to both the demand side of the water industry, being the water user and drought support, as well as technology providers, suppliers, discussing market intelligence, and opportunities in that space to provide for water users. And then also in the regulatory research and finance fields of how to unlock opportunities for both the water users and suppliers. I'm now going to hand over to Claire, the head of our water team, who will be facilitating our webinar further.
Thank you very much, Rudy. So good morning, everyone. Thank you very much for joining us today on this webinar. We're talking a little bit about some research that is kind of our core function and role within the market, and that's predominantly around market intelligence and trying to understand, where the key opportunities are for the water sector. So today I'm going to be the facilitator of the event. I'm lucky enough to head up the agriculture and water program at GreenCape, and I'm going to be handing over to my team members shortly. So first up, I'm going to hand over to Ashton, who's going to take us through his investment opportunities that were highlighted in the recently published 2020 Water Market Intelligence Report. As you listen to his presentation, please can you pop in any questions that you may have around the content that is being presented into the chat function, because after Ashton has completed his presentation, we'll have a quick poll. Then we'll hand over to a panel discussion, and we'll start bringing in some questions and answers to the questions that are posed within the chat. So yeah, as you hear things, please just feel free to use the chat function to ask questions. Some of those questions will be responded to immediately, otherwise we'll be responding to them later on. So yeah, just a reminder for everyone as you probably are all very familiar with Zoom webinars these days, is to make sure that you keep yourself muted at all times. Switch off your video if you can. And yeah, we'll call on you if we would like you to provide a verbal response and unmute you manually. But otherwise, the chat function is your key interactive mechanism. Okay, that's it from me for now. I'm going to hand over to Ashton. If you can provide your presentation, please.
Thank you very much, Claire, and Rudy for the lovely introduction. My duty today, ladies and gentlemen, is to highlight some of the key market opportunities that have arisen in the water sector. And I would like to start off by quoting Dr. Guy McPherson. I quote, he said, "If you really think the environment is less important than the economy, try holding your breath while you count your money," end quote. So this is in essence an emphasis on the fact that the environment is so much important as much as we would like to envisage our economy to be. So in order for one to balance growing the economy, which is much needed for South Africa at the moment, there's also a need to take care of our environment because our livelihoods depend on this environment. So we have seen a number of shocks that the country has received over the decades, and recently in the city of Cape Town and other Western Cape areas, even Eastern Cape at the moment when it comes to drought. But what the market has been moving towards is long-term water resilience, and to look at becoming water secure and at the same time to become energy secure. This is the only way that we will be able to attract investment into our country. All the business people that want to come and invest in our lovely country, they need to know that there is availability of the fundamental resources for them to do business in South Africa. And ladies and gentlemen, I'm talking about water and energy as per se. So the country really needs to start looking into becoming water secure and becoming energy secure. So this is the only way that will be able to attract investment. According to the World Economic Forum of 2019, that was held in Cape Town, water crisis was ranked as one of the two major barriers when it comes to attracting investment or doing business in South Africa. That was beyond unemployment. And these two, at the moment, ladies and gentlemen, are already at the forefront. COVID-19 has visited us and has reminded us again on the importance of water security and ensuring that we've got enough water. So what we highlighted as GreenCape in our 2020 Market Intelligence Report were two opportunities, one in the industrial sector and two in the municipal sector. And these speak directly into water security and energy security as well. And some might coin it and say it speaks into the circular economy. So as GreenCape, we span our work in the green economy. And so we thought that, this is the way. We have been doing lots of work in this space, and we've published other market intelligence reports in the past, and have been highlighting opportunities to respond to shocks. But now we need to move away from responding to shocks and begin to look into opportunities for ensuring that the country becomes secure. So that's our market intelligence report on your right, and that's the URL that if you'd like to download our market intelligence reports, it's back as 2016, they're all there for your own purposes. So in the industrial market, we identified an opportunity in the agri-processing sector that is on water efficiency and wastewater reuse. So we're talking about the fruit and veg market, dairy, animal slaughtering, wineries, breweries, pulp and paper. So this has been earmarked by the Industrial Policy Action Plan as one of the lucrative, sectors that we can grow our economy from. So there are huge savings that one can make if one is to incorporate water efficiency within the process, and if one is to use their wastewater back into the process. So we're talking about fit for purpose water reuse, not direct potable reuse when it comes to agri-processing. So there are a number of drivers that have, led to making this market a very, attractive for investment. That is issues of water security I've alluded to, increasing water and sanitation tariffs, policies and regulations. I've alluded to IPAP. So there are other policies that have come forth that do promote one to invest in water efficiency and water reuse, and also in grant funding as well that is not provided by the National Treasury if one is to incorporate anything that is to water efficiency. There's the issue of protecting our water resources, and there is already a good availability of efficient technologies. But however, the major thing that becomes a problem for us as a country is to try and ensure that we overcome the barriers. So it's an issue of unlocking these barriers so that we attract investment, and so that people, businesses and investors begin to put money into our economy. So these are the things that the panel will be highlighting today, and that we'll be trying to unbundle, because our problems or our barriers are very entangled, to use the current buzzword in the social media. It's very entangled that one needs to strategically, identify areas where one can start and where one can end. So this is a major issue when it comes to unlocking these investments. So I won't go into deeper details about the barriers, because that will be the work of the panel today. But as you can see them on the screen, those are some of the barriers that we need to unlock. So we have a total investment of about 6 billion rand when it comes to water efficiency and wastewater reuse opportunities in the agri-processing sector. One particular note is the pulp and paper. I know that in terms of water savings, there's a huge opportunity, but in terms of water cost savings, it doesn't seem much. This is the issue that, pulp and paper, they don't need potable water. They take their water directly from our water courses, which are, of course, pulp water is very cheap compared to potable water buying it from the municipality. Next slide, Rudy. And then coming into the municipal space as well, we have identified water reuse, that is direct potable reuse, as one of the major opportunities. Of course, there are other, augmentation, systems that are in place. But from the looks of things and looking at the market, water reuse in the municipal space is one of the market opportunities that are available at the moment, and that is at a total of about 50 billion rands throughout the country. So as much as people have looked at, augmenting using desalination, groundwater, and other sources of water, water reuse does provide, a good opportunity in order for us to become water secure. So of course, Gauteng is leading the way, and West is inland. They don't have the luxury of tapping into desalination or even the groundwater system. And thus, water reuse becomes one of the low-hanging fruits. And they do have most of the industrial action and wastewater treatment works, with large capacity, which is the reason why we do have them, appearing as where there is the largest need for investment. And we do have some a number of development plans and municipal strategies, even the City of Cape Town strategies and so forth, that have already identified water reuse, and there are already projects at eThekwini, City of Cape Town, Drakenstein Municipality around water reuse. I hope the panel will also get to unbundle and go into deeper details about the work that has been done in this space. So the major barriers, of course, in the municipal space we know, and one of them is the issue of financing, that not all off-takers are bankable. We are aware about that our municipalities have got a huge debt, and other issues as well, that they're insolvent. So those are some of the things as well. And one major one is also public perception, that I think there's been some work that is being done on the national side to try and address the issues of public perception and health risk, contaminants of image and concern, and so forth. And as well, issue of operational capacity and technical capacity that I'll leave for the panel to discuss. Next slide, Rudy. And then the biogas market as well. This has been alluded to, for the past decades. And there was a study that was done by the GIZ in 2016 to identify those particular wastewater treatment works that have got, feasible or viable projects in terms of the financing. So looking at a project lifespan of about 10 to 15 years. And so there were a number of about 38 wastewater treatment works that were identified and said to be viable for biogas to CHP, that is combined with power, biogas production, and using that to produce electricity. So the drivers are well enough, obvious, issue of energy security as well. And there are regulations as well that have come forth recently with the Western Cape imposing a total landfill ban in 2027. And so there needs to be something that is happening in this space. And also in general, that our landfill size are filling up, and we need to embrace circular economy and SDGs and so forth. So we need to find a way of keeping resources flowing in the system longer. And as it is also part of the a municipal space, there is a barrier in terms of the lack of technical capacity, and that most of these projects are risky, and we've got a number of failures in the past that have been identified, talking about New Horizon and Johannesburg Water as well, identified as facing some problems in the last few months. Next slide, Rudy. Finally, there is energy efficiency. So the UNIDO and GreenCape as well did a project in this space, and there was one study done by Sustainable Energy Africa. So we're currently using old systems, as much as we all know the activity/process, process, which uses energy. And so our treatment works consume a large amount of energy, and so there's a need to come in and start to realize becoming, energy efficient. That might also include, incorporating biogas, as I've spoken about it earlier on. And so there is a total of about 1 billion rands worth of, investment into energy efficient pumps, variable speed drives, and other, equipment that are used in treatment works that can now be replaced with more energy efficient processes. And as well, maybe replacing the extended aeration if possible, or ensuring that it doesn't consume much energy. So the opportunity in the mainly in the metropolitans, and so there are barriers as well that need to be unlocked in order for us to realize this opportunity, and that speaks to the issues of financing and issues of lack of technical capacity and operational complexity, because some of these technologies that are being put forth in the fourth industrial revolution space, or AI, or so to say. So there is a need for a number of work that needs to be done in order to realize all these opportunities. So I think these are the three major opportunities that we have identified as GreenCape, and I hope the panel will hone into these barriers, and let's discuss further on what can be done by the different stakeholders in this space, including GreenCape, that is there to unlock these barriers. So it cannot be one man's job. We need the assistance and collaboration with other stakeholders as well to unlock the barriers and ensure that the country becomes starts to grow the economy, grow jobs, and we realize a very viable economy. I think with those words, that's the end of my presentation. Thank you very much. I'll hand over back to Claire. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ashton, for your presentation. So now we're going to hand over we're going to do a live poll. So just checking if Rudy, there we go. Okay, if you guys can take this opportunity to go to this website, it's www.menti.com. You can either do it on your phone or on your laptop, depending on how you're viewing it or what's easiest for you. When you get to that website, put in the 6-digit code that you see on the screen in front of you. So 360667. And what it's going to present you with is a question relating to the three markets that we've briefly spoken about, as another, and as well as a fourth one that we're quite interested in exploring in future. And it's going to ask you to rank those opportunities in terms of the ones that you feel are the most viable and the ones that you feel are the most interesting to you. So if you can go through and do that now, we'll start to see the results coming up on our screen as you start entering in that information. So I think, as Ashton mentioned, you're the experts in the field. We're really interested in your feedback and understanding where you see the future of the water and sanitation sector heading. As you are aware, our function is really to support the water sector, to help its growth, to improve job and investment, and that's why we publish these free market intelligence reports, but we can't do it without your help. We really need to know where are the interesting opportunities in the space, what should we be focusing on, what should we be researching, and where really is the future of the sector, and where can we develop the most job opportunities. So I can see here that thus far we're doing water reuse in the municipal sector is tied with non-sewage sanitation systems, which is interesting. We've still got a little bit of activity down in the agro-processing and biogas and energy efficiency side of things. Oh, okay, that's just swapped around. The dynamic polling is quite exciting. Let's give it another minute and see where we land on this, because I see they've still got a few results coming through. Okay, so it looks like we're landing up with water reuse in the municipal sector. Okay, very, very interesting. Okay, thank you very much. I think that's really great, because we're going to talk a little bit about the barriers and the opportunities in that space in the panel discussion shortly. Before we switch off, if you can answer the second question that's going to come through on the screen now. So here, also using the same website, same code, please can you enter, you can type it in as a text. Obviously try and keep it as short as possible, but we'd really like some insights from you as to what you see as the major investment opportunities in the near future. So what are the most promising opportunities in the near future? You can reflect, of course, on the ones that we've already spoken about now, or you can throw in some new ideas. Okay, so we've got a direct potable reuse coming through, non-revenue water. Okay, we'll see what's happening. We've got more non-sewer sanitation. Okay, any other ideas that are coming through? Let's give that another few minutes. Let's see what, okay, biogas. Okay. Anything to do with energy saving? Yeah, energy is a hot topic with the ongoing load shedding and the forecast. Okay, so we've got some digitization. Okay. Biogas again. Okay. Water conservation, water efficiency improvements. Wow. Okay. So I've got lots of ideas coming through here. Non-revenue water, especially non-sewered. Okay, these are all really great ideas. I see we've got 18 people that have responded thus far on that. Sludge management, so something we're starting to focus on as well at GreenCape this coming year. Of course, desalination is always a hot topic. AI, water-wise cities, non-revenue water again. I think one of those topics that is continuously cropping up, but we haven't seen much progress nationally on that topic. And alternative energy from previously disposed waste. Okay, so that's also your biogas energy efficiency. So very, very strong links between energy and water, looking at resource recovery, and of course non-revenue water as the kind of major topics they are. Again, non-revenue water, I think it's absolutely crucial for the future, and ensuring that we're much more efficient and using the water that we actually have instead of losing it. Okay. Thank you. I can still see we're getting more responses coming in. I feel like we should be voting on these as well and seeing what are the best things are, but it's probably good on the municipal reuse side of things. So I can see my internet connection is a little bit unstable, but hopefully I'm back again. Okay, so first up, I think just to remind everyone, thank you very much for putting in all this information. I hope you had fun working with the Menti survey. Just a reminder to please enter in any questions that you may have that have cropped up as we're going through this into the chat function. I'm going to be moving over to the panel, and I'm going to ask my esteemed colleagues to respond to some questions. But I'm sure you've also got a few questions yourselves, so please pop those into the chat, and we can. I'll ask my colleagues to respond to them as well. Okay, so first of all, I'm gonna hand over to Roldo Kruger, and Roldo, if you can introduce yourself briefly before responding to the question, that would be fantastic. Okay, so we're going to be talking a little bit about financial barriers. This is a common concern and issue within the water sector, and is constantly referred to as a constraint to the development and the growth of the water sector. And I wanted to get a sense from you as to, what is happening in the space. I mean, is this a really hard and stuck barrier, or are there some opportunities and movement and new initiatives that are perhaps starting to see this barrier being addressed effectively?
Thanks, Claire. Morning, everyone. Roldo Kruger, and part of the water team at GreenCape. And yeah, I think that's a really interesting question, Claire. I think it's a statement. Financial barriers is a statement that comes up in various discussions and various fora when you're speaking to technology providers who want to sell and implement water technologies, and when you often chat to the procurers of technology providers, this is a barrier that's often mentioned. I think it is worth noting that, it's a very generalized statement, and there's a lot of nuances in that. And, those nuances come in from, can be unpicked a little bit by looking at the different markets that we focus on in our market intelligence report. So, for example, in the private sector, in the agro-processing opportunities, as Ashton highlighted, there's significant investment opportunities. And we see that a lot of those opportunities are actually concentrated in a relatively small number of very large industrial and agro-processing companies. And when we engaged with a sample of or subset of those companies a while back in trying to understand the constraints that they face in implementing water projects, they indicated that financing or funding these projects is not a huge barrier for them, because they generally have the balance sheet to finance it themselves internally, or existing lines of credit that they can use to pay for these water projects. And so water-specific financing there's not really a huge demand for that in that market. And their biggest criteria is looking at a water project and saying, does it have a good payback period? And typically, most companies are looking at a 3-year payback for water projects in order to unlock that financing to invest in that project. So, yeah, and then obviously there is the majority of smaller industrial companies that might not have the balance sheet or access to existing lines of credit, that there is a little bit more of a funding barrier in that portion of the market. But that's a relatively small overall opportunity compared to the few big companies. And then I think secondly, looking at the kind of public sector, if you look at the municipal market, there's actually a very similar pattern that emerges in that the majority of investment opportunities by size and volume is located in the large metropolitan municipalities. And we know also that most of those metro municipalities are well-governed, well-resourced, well-capacitated, and they have access to raise finance for water projects internally, as well as access to commercial and development finance institution funding at very competitive rates. So for them, it's more a challenge of timing those investments into large water infrastructure projects correctly, and being able to recoup those investments through the tariffs over time. And then, of course, at the other end of the spectrum, we do know that, unfortunately, a large majority of the smaller and intermediate municipalities are only able to access grant funding because their internal governance and management of water assets isn't at a level where they can easily access any other funding sources. And then somewhere in between that, there's some intermediate municipalities which are actually very well governed and well run and well managed, but they might not have the technical capacity to prepare projects in a way that they can attract private sector financing. And so, for example, the Western Cape government has recently launched a program to help those smaller secondary and intermediate municipalities within the Western Cape to prepare municipal infrastructure projects for private sector investment. So again, there the constraint isn't necessarily financial or monetary, but it's more just the capacity to be able to unlock those finances. So yeah, I think I'll leave it at that, Claire. Thanks.
Okay, I guess just one follow-up question, Roldo, before you disappear. There's been a lot of discussion over the last few years around public-private partnerships in the water sector. I just wanted to, you've obviously mentioned this particular initiative within the Western Cape, but I know the Development Bank of South Africa, etc. They've looked at this, as well as National Treasury. I mean, just a sense check from you as to whether you think progress has been made on this, and if it's a viable solution for the water sector.
Yeah, I think that's, there's obviously been a lot of dialogue around that over the last few years. And I think there are instances where triple Ps make a lot of sense. So not just to overcome the financial kind of barrier constraint within the municipal sector, but also to some extent the capacity constraints. So PPP kind of addresses both of those in packaging the financing and the technical operation of that project outside of, external to the municipality. I think the real challenge with triple Ps is that where they are most suited, they're most suited to big projects, and those big projects are typically, possible or available within the metropolitan municipalities, and the constraints are not as much on the, those technical and financial constraints are not as prevalent in the metropolitan municipalities. So, and trying to do a triple P at a very small scale doesn't make sense, because the transaction costs and the lead time to developing that project is just way too long to really gain the benefit of a triple P.
Okay. Yeah, thank you. Again, this mismatch, I guess, between where the resources are needed and where they're available. So yeah, thank you very much, Roldo. I'll loop back to you again, but you're off spotlight for now. I'm going to hand over to my colleague Jane, and again, Jane, if you can provide a brief introduction before responding. So again, in terms of the major barriers that are identified in our analysis, we often talk about policies, regulations, authorizations. This is a sector that is heavily regulated, but sometimes these regulations and policies act as drivers, and sometimes they act as barriers. They're obviously key for project success. And I know you've spent quite a lot of time, looking into the agro-processing sector, as well as into reuse, also at the municipal scale. If you can give me a sense as to how you see these policies and regulations acting sometimes as a barrier and sometimes as a driver, and what do you foresee as the major changes that are needed to be able to really mobilize growth in these sectors? Jane?
Hello, thanks Claire. So I'm a water sector analyst at GreenCape, and just a bit of context, for example, we worked on a project last year funded by the IFC to look at water efficiency opportunities in the agro-processing sector, and as part of this project we interviewed around 27 major agro-processing companies in South Africa and around 17 industry associations within the sector. And what we found interviewing them from a policy and regulatory point of perspective is that the major driver for investment in reuse was the wastewater discharge regulations. So in particular, companies that were under pressure, either financially or legally, to invest in pre-treatment of their wastewater before it's discharged to sewer or to the environment or irrigation. If they were required to, under pressure, to invest in pre-treatment, then it became that much more cost effective to just treat it that much further and reuse it on site for non-product contact purposes. So that was a key driver within the sector. But there are also the wastewater discharge regulations also actually was also a bit of a barrier or a disincentive for efficiency in the sector. For example, some of the companies that had reduced their water consumption and put in place water efficient measures had reduced their wastewater such that now the volume was much smaller, but the concentration was much higher. And now they were triggering the municipal discharge limits for various pollutants and getting penalized. So, because most municipalities assess wastewater based on the concentration of pollutants, not the load. So that that was a bit of a disincentive, and there are several others. But I think one of the key challenges that are preventing the uptake of sort of reuse in particular, or high capital intensive water projects, is that the fact that the water tariffs are quite low. And so capital intensive water projects like reuse projects without energy recovery, they often have paybacks of 7 to 8 years. Or more, depending on the situation. And as Roldo mentioned, agro-processing companies seem to consistently really be only interested in paybacks of less than 3 years. So that's quite a challenge. But that's not to say that all water efficiency measures are there isn't a good business case for. There are a number of low-cost interventions like staff awareness programs, improve metering and monitoring, water infrastructure retrofits, like just basic things like changing to efficient spray nozzles, etc., or reusing higher quality wastewater like COP rinse water. Those kind of measures are relatively cheap. It's very quick paybacks. Typical savings you can save. Most companies reported sort of 30% savings from those. But interviewing the major agro-processors in South Africa, most of those companies had already implemented those. The only sort of area where there seems to still be an opportunity is around smart water metering, which I think there's still a big opportunity for companies to do that. But around reuse, the major opportunity in the sector seems to be around reuse, with or without energy recovery. So treating their wastewater up to a standard that they can reuse it for non-product contact purposes. But again, the paybacks at the moment are often longer, but there are situations where it does make more sense. Like I said, where companies are under pressure to invest in pre-treatment and those type of things, or in municipalities where the tariffs are a lot higher. For example, City of Joburg, they do have higher tariffs than most other areas. Yeah, thank you.
Cool. Thank you very much, Jane. I really appreciate that. So I'm going to hand over to one of our newest water team members now. So Marielle, again, if you can introduce yourself as well. So Marielle's been with us for just over a month now, and was previously working at Proxa. So she brings with her quite an interesting experience. And I mean, Marielle, from your previous experience, operational complexity is often highlighted as a barrier in a number of the investment opportunities. Is this your experience from previously, and what has been done to overcome this particular barrier?
Hi everyone, thanks Claire. As Claire mentioned, my name is Marielle. I joined GreenCape a month ago, and I'm also a water sector analyst. So yes, Claire, I definitely agree. Operational complexity is definitely a significant barrier. The reason being that seasonal fluctuations in the incoming water quality contribute significantly to the operational complexity of the treatment works as a whole. So this is when an experienced and well-trained operator is required that knows the process train and can adjust operating parameters to still maintain product quality. So what we have seen, or from my experience, what I've seen private companies do, is that they provide a contract add-on to include the operation and maintenance of the plant. This enables them to further capitalize on the investment and also ensure the longevity of the plant. Mainly the advantage for the user or the client is that experienced technicians and engineers are readily available to advise on suitable and most applicable operational practices. The two advantages of this opportunity then is that it significantly contributes to community development. So the company will typically provide on-site operator job opportunities. They will provide in-house training to these operators by experienced engineers. And secondly, the maintenance turnaround times on the plant is also significantly improved. I would also just like to add, from a municipal side, what we're seeing is that municipalities sometimes kind of get private companies to kind of conduct the operations and maintenance just because of the experience and the fast maintenance turnaround times they provide. So yeah, that's my 2 cents.
Thank you, Marielle. Welcome. Really glad to have you on board. And now just a final question for Roldo. So non-sewer sanitation is something that you've spent a bit of time over the last year looking into. It's something that we as a team are really interested and are quite keen to highlight as a potential investment opportunity in the forthcoming market intelligence report. So I guess, yeah, for those of you out there, although we've just published the 2020 Market Intelligence Report, the work is starting already on the 2021 one, and we've been doing a lot of internal brainstorming and discussions around, what do we see as the major investment opportunities, and so non-sewer sanitation is one that we've been focusing in on, particularly as a result of COVID-19. I think it's really highlighted, the discrepancies, around the sanitation provision within informal settlements, etc. But yeah, I guess I wanted to give us a bit of a download, Roldo, your thinking on the space and what really needs to be done to attract investment into non-sewer sanitation.
Thanks, Claire. Yeah, and I think, just related to the poll that we did earlier, that this technology did come up quite a lot in that poll. So it seems to be quite a lot of interest in that. I think, we have a water sector audience here. So I think a lot of people will already have recognized the potential for non-sewer sanitation systems, and particularly in the context of providing sanitation services to unserviced communities. We all know that there's a massive demand for that and a massive need for that in South Africa, and yet that need hasn't always been met. But there's so many reasons why non-sewer sanitation systems are well suited to addressing that need, because these systems can be implemented relatively quickly with short lead times, and they're modular. They can be scaled up and down according to the needs of that that community. And importantly, if you look at the cost of these systems over the lifespan of the asset, they actually come in at very competitive rates compared to traditional wastewater treatment work. So you're not asking necessarily municipalities to pay more for a service that they would have through traditional technologies. But the benefits are that you can implement it more quickly, and like I said, you can scale it up and down depending on the needs of the situation. I think, to answer your question, what can we do to attract investment into this area? I think the emphasis here really is to work on the demand side. So procurers of these potential procurers of these technologies to help them understand the benefits of the technology, and that there's a lot of technology providers that provide technologies in the space that are mature, well established, and the businesses are well run. So it's not like we're asking municipalities to trial untested technology, although there is a subset of non-sewer sanitation technologies that are in development and not mature yet. But I think if we can focus on those set of technologies that are mature, that are well established, that have been proven not just locally but internationally, and help municipalities, manage their perceived risks on that side, then we could generate a lot more interest in this area, and it could really be a way to accelerate the uptake of these technologies and meet a massive demand in South Africa.
Roldo, I have to ask you though, before you disappear, the question around community acceptance of kind of non-traditional sanitation it always seems to be a kind of a key concern and sticking point. What have you seen in terms of addressing this, and is it as big an issue as has been noted locally as well as internationally?
Yeah, no, that's a hugely important consideration and point to make. I think in the context of South Africa, we understand that the expectation is to deliver waterborne sanitation services to everyone. And so the term non-sewer sanitation systems obviously includes the full spectrum of technology. So from dry sanitation to waterborne on-site wastewater treatment works. And I think the kind of sweet spot at the moment is, you know, and based on a lot of other institutions that have done a lot of work in this area, is that dry sanitation, you know, the barriers to overcome the user acceptance of dry sanitation are, you know, just a little bit of too far a stretch at this point in time. So the sweet spot is probably focusing on waterborne on-site wastewater treatment, and with the bonus of being able to reuse that water for the toilet flushing, for example, and almost create like a closed loop system so that the actual water use on systems like that is fairly minimal. And it provides that opportunity to gain a lot of user acceptance, because the user experience at the front end is waterborne sanitation.
Thanks, Roldo. So yeah, I think that's what we're hoping to see. I think just the fact that it's not as alternative as it perhaps may seem, and certainly not to the end user. I'd like to direct my next question to Ashton. So Ashton, I mean, when we did the poll, municipal reuse was highlighted as the top opportunity and the one that this audience is most interested in. I'd like to kind of understand why you think that's the case. I don't think we're particularly surprised by that result, but I'd love to get your sense as to, you know, why that was highlighted as the biggest opportunity. But I think, you know, noting that the health risks and public perception around direct potable reuse are substantial. You know, just to perhaps reflect a little bit on what's being done internationally to address these concerns, and perhaps if you have any local examples, it would be great to bring it into the discussion.
Thanks, Claire, for the question. I think going back to the presentation earlier on, to say that if we all look into water reuse, you know, whether it be direct potable reuse or be it fit for purpose reuse, it is a big opportunity in the sense that, I mean, every municipality that has got the capacity and the funds, we can all do it. Compared to tapping into other sources that not everyone has got the privilege or the luxury to tap into those other opportunities. For example, talking about groundwater, there's only a sect that have privilege of having, you know, fully grown or, you know, good groundwater sources. And as well, if you look into desalination, which I know that is something that our international brothers and sisters always allude to, that what about desalination? Why not tap into desalination? Looking at the capex issues, you know, desalination is a bit expensive for South Africa at the moment. And the city of Cape Town has just, you know, decommissioned some of its desalination plants that were put up during the drought. So what we see is to, you know, be honest to ourselves and look into our coffers that we don't have enough at the moment, and look into the low-hanging fruits. As short as we are, what is the lowest hanging fruit that we can reach out to? And for me, it is water reuse, because looking at it from the perspective of money-wise and investment-wise, and that it's everybody has the opportunity to, you know, to tap into water reuse compared to others. So until we get to a point where we develop, you know, cheaper ways of using desalinated water, then we can start talking about those other sources. And of course, the city has decided, City of Cape Town, I'm saying, has decided to, you know, look into water reuse and look into, you know, aquifer recharge and getting water from, from these aquifers. Table Mountain Aquifer, as I speak, it was commissioned last week. We are beginning to tap and get water from the aquifers. So it's something that we all have to be honest to ourselves and look at yourself and be honest to say, this is what I can afford, or this is what I can work with at the moment. Part B of your question was in terms of why, water reuse and the public perception had the risk. This is a big concern, and extrapolating from Ronaldo's contributions now that, the masses or the people out there, our residents or citizens, who are the people that, don't want water reuse because of the way that it has been, communicated to them. I think it was the former statesman that Nelson Mandela once said, speak to a man in the language that he understands, and then you'll be speaking to his heart. I'm paraphrasing, of course. So I think the major things that have been done worldwide is to look at the way we communicate water reuse, direct potable reuse. So we were privileged as GreenCape to, host a webinar, a workshop for the city of Cape Town when it comes to communicating water reuse to the people. So places like Singapore, they use phrases like new water, not to call it anything else. So we need to find a way of really speaking to the people out there and making them understand what is it that we're talking about. And we need to be inclusive in that approach, which is one thing that has been lacking over the years. So I know that WISA and the Water Research Commission, in collaboration with COCTA and I think DPSA to some extent, are working on a water reuse program, where I think it's WISA and Water Research Commission that will be involved deeply in terms of communicating the language and making sure that the population knows what it is that we're talking about. So on my side, we need to be transparent as well, which is something that is lacking in the water sector. We need to be transparent to our users and our consumers. Let them see what we do and let them have faith that this water is really suitable to drink, and this new water is same like the water that have been taken from the rivers. And education is very important as well. Let's start off by taking this to primary schools and re-emphasizing that we are drinking water that our ancestors or our forefathers or the previous generations have been using. So the water is just being recycled over and over the time. And yeah, so I think it's an issue of communication on my side, and we need to do more. And we need to do more as well in terms of the contaminants of nature concern. Continue to innovate and really ensure that those contaminants, they become part of SANS 241. And we get to report on some of those emerging concerns that pharmaceuticals, they should not exceed such an amount. All these antiretroviral drugs that have been found in our water in the past. And of course, COVID has come in as well. And there was fear amongst the people that it might be waterborne and we might be contracting it through water. So we need to start walking the talk and being transparent and addressing and communicating properly. Thank you.
Thank you, Ashton. I'm going to now ask a question of also one of our new recruits, Rudy. So Rudy's also just recently joined GreenCape. We're really glad to have her on board as well. So Rudy, as a newbie, you're also in the privileged position to be able to kind of provide us with some critical feedback. So I think that's there's a lot of talk about smart technologies, about the fourth industrial revolution, and yet we haven't highlighted it as a key opportunity currently. And I just wanted to get a sense from you, does this make sense? Are we missing a trick? Is this something we should be focusing on a lot more as a major investment opportunity? And if not, why? So yeah, Rudy, you're welcome to criticize all you like for now.
Thanks, Claire. So hello everybody, my name is Rudy Buerta. I've recently joined GreenCape from Oricon, and I'm a water sector analyst as well. I actually recently attended the Smart Water Network Forum conference on smart technologies in the water space. And I was overwhelmingly surprised at how many new technologies across the world are being implemented at utility scale in terms of both networks and at treatment plants for smart technologies. However, the conference theme and main takeaway in their closing statement was that all these technologies need to be intertwined with your human capital, that is your staff. And I think that's where a lot of people, a lot of these utilities worldwide are struggling. It's one thing implementing these smart technologies to smart meter or to look for pipe leaks. They have all these ultrasound technologies for pipe leak detection and complete remote control of your treatment plants. But if you don't have the staff and the technical capacity to intertwine that technical advancement, it isn't effective, and you're not really getting the benefit of that smart technology. And so it's really it's an integration process that is very, very important to make a successful smart technology happening. And the City of Cape Town have recently released a tender that they're going to be replacing all 600,000 water meters in the city over the next 8 years with smart water meters. And so I think there's a start in South Africa for these sorts of technologies, but it's definitely still in the planning phase, and it's going to involve public perception and overcoming that challenge as well, not just in the reuse space, it's in the smart technology space as well. I mean, if somebody's monitoring your water consumption and has the ability to shut you off, the public are going to be hyper aware of the fact that the city now control that. They can almost load shed your water, and it's going to be a challenge to implement. So as long as it's done in partnership with people, it can really work. But I think that's where the limitation is at this point.
Thank you, Rudy. Really insightful. So really a nascent kind of sector that and component of the sector that we hope to see growth in the future. But yeah, there are some fundamental challenges I think that had to be dealt with within South Africa. So we're bang on time. I think we've got to the end of our webinar. Thank you very much for everyone that has attended. I hope you found it interesting. We'll obviously share the presentation. I think Melissa will probably share the presentation with everyone hereafter. And yeah, I think, you know, we are, just to remind everyone, we're here to try and support the growth of the sector. And we're constantly, you know, looking for insights and ideas, and for really thinking about how do we tackle some of the major barriers? What can we do to improve the job creation and investment potential within the sector? So yeah, if you guys have some thoughts or would like to share some research with us, please do so, and yeah, we would really like your support as well. We're here to help you. So yeah, please let us know. And of course, if you would like to be a member of GreenCape, costs you absolutely no money whatsoever. You just go and sign up on our website, and you'll get invitations to events and newsletters and things like that. We promise not to spam you. Okay, thank you very much. Thank you very much to my colleagues. Thank you very much to WISA for organizing and hosting this event. I hope you all found it valuable. Goodbye.